Hi, good morning. Can we do a brief audio test?
We can hear you, Jim, and then we just got our mic, so can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great, thank you. You ready? Yes. Thank you. So this is Pat O'Connell calling to order the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission special open meeting. It's Thursday, June 20th, 2024, just after 2:15 in the afternoon. With us today for Office of General Counsel is Miss Erica Avila Stefans. And so could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Ellison,
Present.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Present.
Commissioner Aguilera.
Present.
All three commissioners are present and we have a quorum.
Thank you. So next up is a Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for that. Next is consideration and approval of the agenda. Pretty light agenda, but I understand Commissioner Aguilera would like to discuss something.
Yes, I would like to add another item to the agenda of just communications with commissioners. And then potentially before adjournment. And so I would move to add that. And to provide a little context, I want to talk a little bit about the potential comments to the Department of Energy on their national transmission corridors.
Yeah, I have no objection to that. Commissioner Ellison, do you have any discussion or on that idea? Or any other changes you want to see the agenda? Sorry.
No, I have no objection to that proposal and no other changes to propose.
Great. So then I'll just say, let's proceed with the agenda. So we've got public comment, one action item, and communications with commissioners. And so seeing no disagreement, we'll proceed with that. So next up will be public comment. There's nobody in the room here, and I'm not seeing anybody on Zoom. So if you are on Zoom and you're wanting to provide public comment on this meeting, can you please signify by using the hand raise feature? Okay, so seeing none, we'll go ahead and proceed. So we're on the action item, which is case 23-00222 UT. We'll start with a presentation from Kevin Gedko from Office of General Counsel. Floor is yours, sir.
Good afternoon, commissioners. The matter we have before us today is matter 23-00222-UT. It's the matter of El Paso Electric Company's proposed changes to rate schedule number 16 pursuant to NMPRC Rule 17.9.570 NMAC. The determination of rates for purchases from qualifying facilities under advice notice number 285. Just for a first brief history, on May 24th, 2023, EPE filed advice notice number 285 with proposed changes to rate schedule number 16. EPE filed the rate to comply with the Commission's amended Rule 17.9.570 NMAC, which was adopted on April 20th, 2022, and which required EPE to file a new tariff within 1 year of the approval date of the rule. The rule was updated to conform parts of Rule 570 to new regulations that were approved by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in July 2020. On August 8th, 2023, EPE filed an amended advice notice based on staff's review of the initial advice notice. And on June 3rd, 2024, earlier this month, the Commission held a public hearing on EPE's amended advice notice to receive testimony and evidence. So what is before the Commission today? What is before the Commission is the decision of whether to approve the filed for rate schedule 16, which includes the avoided cost rates to be paid for the energy or capacity provided by qualifying facilities that qualify as a small power production or cogeneration facility. Avoided costs means the incremental cost to an electric utility of electric energy or capacity, or both, which, but for the purchase from the qualifying facility, such utility would generate itself or purchase from another source. The pertinent areas of the rule are Rule 17.9.570.11B1. What's pertinent there is that it establishes that a utility participating in the Western Energy Imbalance Market may establish the energy rate to be paid for power supplied by a qualifying facility by reference to the appropriate Western EIM locational marginal price determined on an hourly basis, if such locational marginal price is representative of the utility's avoided cost. So with respect to that, EPE has proposed two avoided cost rates for QFs on its system. One is for QFs rated at 5 megawatts and below, and that consists of an average of the Western Energy Imbalance Market system ELAP prices over the 30 days prior to the month in which that rate is being applied. And then there's a second rate for QFs that would be above 5 megawatts, of which there are currently no QFs of that size on EPE's system. And that would be done based on the hourly Western EIM EPE system ELAP prices. With respect to the issues that may be discussed that are in the order, there is the issue of the use of the 30-day average and how that relates to a reference to the hourly prices of the WEAM ELAP price. There has been discussed the issue of negative market prices that exist in the Western Energy Imbalance Market and how that integrates into the avoided cost rates. There's the issue of communication of the avoided cost rates to customers and how that is done. And there's the issue of the communication of amounts paid to QFs on an ongoing basis in fuel clause continuation filings. So that's a general history, a general overview, and I tried to queue up a few items. I know you all are very familiar with the order. And at this point and before you are two draft orders. They essentially mirror one another. One of them includes certain reporting requirements for El Paso Electric to meet. The other order includes language for the Commission's ability to instigate a workshop in the future to discuss this issue more. Both of the orders propose an approval of the rate. And with that, and given your knowledge of these already, I stand for questions.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. And then before we proceed any further, I should read into the record recitation for a closed session that we had to discuss this case. So on Friday, June 14th, 2024, the Commission met in closed session, which was properly noticed on June 11th and closed pursuant to NMSA 1978 paragraph 10-15-1H3, deliberations by public body in connection with administrative adjudicatory proceeding. I affirm for the record that the matters discussed in the closed session were limited only to those specified in the notice and agenda for that meeting, specifically deliberations regarding in the matter of El Paso Electric Company's proposed changes to rate schedule number 16 pursuant to NMPRC Rule 17.9.570 NMAC, determination of rates for purchases from qualifying facilities under advice notice number 285, and this is case number 23-00222 UT. So also note that case number 22-00058 UT, which is the matter of Public Service Company of New Mexico's application for approval of grid modernization plan, was noticed in the closed meeting agenda. It was removed from the agenda at the beginning of the closed meeting and was not discussed during the closed meeting. So I further affirm that no final actions were taken. So having taken care of that, I think we're ready to proceed. Commissioners, if you have any questions or discussion on the final orders that are proposed or anything else related to this case.
I can start. This is a very curious case. I mean, it's not every day that we receive an application for a rate decrease. And I think the record here shows that that is effectively what it is based on the responses to the bench request, in including the EIM prices for QFs. I think it's also possible that it could be a rate increase for a given month, but I think the record, at least based on the examples that EPE provided, show that this is largely a rate decrease. And so I wanted to point that out because the change in the rate is something that I've been very focused on, sort of the impact of it, and also because I do think that it's true that we don't usually see rate decreases. And then it just so happens that here, we're talking about the rate that the utility is paying to a QF, as opposed to the rates that customers are paying to the utility. And so this admittedly is challenging for me, because I think that our rules are pretty clear that the WEIM is a proposal that could be used to determine the avoided cost, as outlined in PURPA and FERC's orders implementing PURPA. And on the other hand, I do think that the rates proposed here, although we can never know exactly what they are because they'll be changing based on future EIM prices, are significant. And so while I think about this in terms of the rule that says you can use the EIM price, I'm also thinking about what else constitutes a just and reasonable rate. And so I'm kind of led to thinking about the principle of gradualism, and whether it's just and reasonable to revise these rates that are, you know, by my estimation, based on what the existing rate is and what El Paso explained the rate would have been given last year's EIM prices. You know, it's mostly a decrease of payments to QFs of, 50%. And again, that'll be variable depending on the price, but I'm stuck kind of thinking about whether a reduction of the rate of 50% is just and reasonable. I guess I'll leave it there for now to see what other comments commissioners might have. But I wanted to note that that's something I'm thinking about in terms of deciding whether, to me, this rate appears to be just and reasonable or not.
Commissioner Ellison, did you have anything?
Yes, please. I would like to make a few comments. I do have concerns with the use of the energy imbalance market pricing as being representative of avoided marginal cost, and my concerns are largely around the fact that it really doesn't represent a full dispatch cost in the way that, say, the Southwest Power Pool locational marginal price would. It really is a dispatch after the day ahead scheduling has been done, and EPE confirmed in questioning that they are not always able to purchase power or sell power at this price because their units have already been scheduled. So I do have concerns around how good a representation of avoided cost this EIM pricing is. At the same time, it's something that our rules seem to allow, and that there really wasn't sufficient evidence in the record against it. There really wasn't much at all in the record against this, and so I think I would have a hard time voting against this, approving this methodology. At the same time, I would very much like the ability to revisit the methodology. I am not really obviously a big fan of this change, and I would like to ask Mr. Gedko if either the report or the workshop option gives us some trigger to ask for a new application after we've received new information.
To respond to that, and I could be corrected, but I believe it's probably the same between the two, in that neither a reporting requirement or a workshop would trigger in and of itself a need for reapplication. That would need to happen through it, likely in order to show cause from the commission. After reviewing the reporting requirements, if the commission determined there was a reason to revisit whether it's a just and reasonable rate, the commission would have the ability to issue an order to show cause so that EPE could justify that the rate that has been put into effect is just and reasonable. I believe a workshop, the process would be the same in that what would be gleaned from the workshop would generate information that would provide an incentive for the commission to take that approach.
Great, thank you. And I would like to hear Commissioner O'Connell and Aguilera's opinion on whether a workshop or a report would be a better option, and also whether they are mutually exclusive.
Thank you for the segue, Commissioner. I'm a proponent of the workshop, and I'll tell you why. I mean, start off calling it a curious case. I'm also finding that we're implementing a very interesting rule. This rule applies to everybody. All three IOUs, munis, co-ops, the whole world. So I'm not used to seeing that in a rule. Also found that through working through this case, just my personal experience was it was very easy to get high centered between what I considered theoretical purity and practical reality. So good example of that would be, is EIM the right price? Well, it is if we're talking about forecast error. It might not be if we're talking about something else. Is 50% a violation of gradualism? Like, well, it is if you're only thinking about this rate. If you're thinking about customers' bills, probably isn't, because it's a small piece of a small piece of most people's bills. So that's just the kind of examples of my own personal struggle as we've been working through this. Is it, do I pursue what I think would be theoretically pure, or do I acknowledge the reality of the moment we're in? So acknowledging the reality of the moment we're in is why I'm in favor of either path on this order, because I just plain language of the rule, it's been proposed in accordance with the rule. So I think approving the proposal is the right thing to do. So then what that leaves us with is, I think all of us want more information. We want to understand this better so we can do something, maybe an improvement going forward. So then you're in the lane of, do I ask prescriptive questions? Do I have a hard revisiting date, or do I do a workshop? I like the workshop because I know what questions I might ask, and I'll tell you, I've come up with a different list of questions between last Friday when we had our deliberative session and now. So I'm not crystallized yet on what the right questions are. I'm not the god of this panarchy, so there's everybody is affected by this rule. I'd rather start with what other people think is the right questions and right topics to explore. So again, that leads me to workshop. I agree with what Mr. Gidko said about the trigger to revisit. Order to show cause is an option no matter what we do. I also think if we have a workshop and it reveals that, hey, this rule could be rewritten better, it could also trigger a rulemaking, and then that would be a revisiting trigger too, is okay, conform your rate to the new rule. So anyway, I just prefer the inclusiveness of workshop and the options it gives me at the end. I mean, you can go ahead and ask prescriptive questions now, but like I say, I tried to write those questions in a way that I knew I'd get the information I wanted, and I failed. So I'm not opposed to asking questions now. I just think workshops more valuable.
And would the workshop include other utilities and other stakeholders outside of this case?
Yes. If we ask questions in this case, we're only asking EPE.
If I may, gentlemen, I imagine too, if the workshop generated reporting goals, there could be an inquiry docket that could be used to file reporting at that point.
That.
Yeah, I see your points. I think there are good arguments for a workshop. As to the specific rate proposed here, this is a hard one for me. I think you know, and largely because of the amount of the rate change, which I understand is you know, arguably to some not enormous, I think, in the grand scheme of things. We're not talking about a huge portion of the energy cost to customers, but I think for individual customers, this is very significant. And I think it's very likely that many of these QFs, which are residential net metered solar customers, will go from receiving a credit to having to pay a bill. I think that is a disincentive to rooftop solar, residential rooftop solar. And that's not the direction that I would like to go in. So, but
Yeah, no, I'm sympathetic to that, and I don't want to make it sound like I am indifferent to what impact this has on any one person's bills. It's just the evidence on the record is the activity that this rate applies to isn't driven by the payment you get as for being a QF. It's driven by you managing your own bill, managing your own energy use that you get charged for by the utility, and maybe managing your own personal impact on the environment. So those are all considerations that are unchanged by this rate. And then, so that's the evidence we do have on the record. I don't have any evidence saying this violates gradualism. But I do know I've got an obligation to implement the rules and the laws of the state of New Mexico. So absent anything else, it's easy for me to imagine how what you're saying is true, but I don't have enough on the record to tell me to not follow the rule.
well, in terms of what we do have is we have the existing rate and we have the proposed rate, and we have information as to how the proposed rate would have ended up given last year's EIM prices. And so we can compare the existing rate to the proposed rate based on last year's EIM, because that is information that El Paso provided. So again, they vary, and we'll never, you know, you can't take this data and say that it's going to be the same going forward. I think we have to recognize that the prices are variable, and we also have to recognize that sometimes the QFs will get a better rate from their perspective in the future. So I think we just can't know for sure, but we do know that based on the information they gave us in April of 2023, they would have been paid. Their rate would have decreased by 71%. In May, by 80%, in June by 86%, July 72%, August 82%. In October, they would have gotten a higher rate. So I don't think it's completely fair to say that there is no evidence.
Yeah, no, you summarized my point very well by saying we don't know for sure. What we do know for sure is what the rule says. So that was the point I was making.
And I would like to provide a little context in terms of these payments. Clearly, as we've stated, right now, everyone in El Paso Electric that would be receiving these qualifying facility payments have residential solar. There are no large industrial customers with large solar facilities that this would apply to, and because everyone with residential solar in EPE's territory has a net energy metered basis with the utility, these payments are only applying to the situation when the customer generates more power than they use in a given month. In most cases, I would imagine that the customer has sized their facility, their solar panels such that they're not generating huge surpluses over the year. And in EPE's case, with net energy metering, they are paying out the balance of whatever surplus a customer has generated in a given month, and not carrying that balance forward from month to month. That's EPE's particular type of net energy metering. That's I think that is not consistent across our three utilities. But again, I would imagine that residential customers may have some surplus in the summer months and probably a deficit. Probably they are buying power from the utility in the winter months. But I suspect that this would not greatly change the economics of wanting to have residential solar because of the net energy metered basis.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ellison. That's what I was trying to describe is what I saw as evidence on the record too. But you're bringing up an interesting point, Commissioner Aguilera, that I think is, again, theoretical purity, curiosity question. Does gradualism apply to, for example, the gas company's purchase gas cost factor?
I would say that it does not necessarily, because prices are different. But I would also say that QFs are not similarly situated to generators, or in this case, suppliers of gas.
I mean, the reason I was asking that question is, again, agreement that this is in line with the rule and PURPA, and that says you can charge a market price, and purchase gas cost factors at more or less pure market price. It can change quickly up or down because market conditions have changed. And that feels like one of the, if we're going to use gradualism as a reason to not use a market price, just exploring that idea.
I think that that's true. I did, like I said, I don't see QFs to be exactly comparable to generators, especially the ones below 5 megawatts. the ones above 5 megawatts, which we know there are none in the service territory, but just in theory, I think would be more sophisticated QFs that can choose when to offer energy and when not to. In the case of generators that are the ones true, wholesale generators that are the ones playing in the EIM and actually helping to set the LMPs and ELAPs that we see in this case, those are generators that have control over when they want to play in the market. They could submit a bid or not. They may have to if they have a must offer obligation, but I think those are differently situated. Those market participants are in it to make money. A larger QF is also in it to make money. A residential solar customer is trying to offset their energy usage. So I see them differently because the residential solar customers don't have an opportunity to say whether they want to sell their power or energy or not. And so I think you raise a good point. I think this is a different situation. If we're talking about sophisticated wholesale market participants, I absolutely agree with you. I think this case is different.
So is it different enough to propose a third final order?
I don't have an order to propose here. I'm happy to write it. Admittedly, I'm very much on the fence.
Yeah, I guess that's what I've been trying to express is if I'm on the fence, I'm gonna follow the rule. So that's why I'm in favor of the final order. Either version that's been proposed. And of the two, I think workshop gives us better information and more flexibility. Make
I
sure
would
you don't
agree.
feel left out, Commissioner Ellison.
No, I'm fine. I would agree with that. I am not completely comfortable with with saying that the EIM pricing is a good representation of avoided marginal cost. At the same time, I think there's really nothing in the record that would speak against it, and it is something that is contemplated in our rule, and in fact seems to be the sort of the top choice in our rule as an avoided cost proxy. So I would be in favor of adopting either version. I too would lean towards a workshop. The only hesitation I have is that we've got a lot of important issues. I'm not sure how this stacks up against the other priorities we have, but in the spirit of really opening this up and getting more utilities and parties involved and figuring it out, that's something that I would support. But I do want to emphasize that I think we need the ability to come back and revisit this when we have more information and more understanding of the subject.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any more?
Yeah, and then I would just say, so I agree with the workshop, and I think also the analysis changes when you have better hourly information about what is being generated and what is being consumed. So I would not say that, if this is approved, I would not say that the structure of how this is approved, meaning calculated, netted at the end on a monthly basis, and all EIM prices, including negative prices and, prices at 3 a.m. when we know rooftop solar is not generating, that those are necessarily appropriate if you have AMI installed. And so, in these workshops, that would be something that I would be interested in exploring further too. I say that not as a final determination, but just a preliminary thought that I think it could be different.
Yeah, well said. I think that's why I'm hearing all three of us are in agreement. We'd like to know more. And I also wholeheartedly agree that this is a dynamic environment and information available is going to change quickly. So I haven't heard all that. I'm going to move for approval of the version in the final order that calls for a workshop.
I second.
Looks like OGC has a question here.
I just wanted to be sure of one thing, like the alternate version with reporting requirements had most of the reporting requirements written that were with respect to information that could be gathered once AMI was installed on EPE's system. There was one other reporting requirement that was proposed as an edit that did not depend upon that, and that would have required a report to come in at a much sooner point in time than the other reporting requirements. And just to put that on the table, does anybody want any reporting requirement in this, or do you all feel comfortable that we accomplish it totally through the workshop?
Well, maybe I misheard you earlier, but when you were talking through the options, what I heard was we can start the workshop by sending out questions. And so that was my thought, is we can sweep up the questions we were planning to ask in this case, make them applicable to the world, not just EPE. And before we have a workshop, start the workshop with a preliminary list of questions. So maybe I heard that wrong, but
I'll take credit for it.
And I'll chime in here because I was interested in seeing, so I agree with the chairman here that a workshop would be able to extract the information that we're looking for and that I'm looking for. For me, part of the reporting requirement was with respect to explaining how the QFs have been impacted based on the existing rate and the proposed rate. But I think the workshop will be able to provide that information.
yeah, I'd like to hear that from P&M also. Okay, are there any other discussions, or feels like we're ready to vote, but I don't want to call for a vote without giving you the opportunity to chime in, Commissioner Ellison?
I think the direction we're headed is fine. I did just want to say I don't think the report and the workshop are necessarily exclusive, but I take your point, Mr. Chair, that we certainly our practice is to send out a bench request with correct questions ahead of the workshop, and that's a fine way to handle it as well.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Stephans?
Commissioner Aguilera,
I'm going to vote no. I'll explain.
Commissioner O'Connell,
Yes.
Commissioner Ellison.
Aye.
The vote passes 2-1.
So I first want to note that I think that from a legal perspective and from our rules, I think that the commission is well within its right to make this decision to approve the rates. As I explained in, probably too much detail, I am concerned about the impact of the rate. I think it's too drastic, and importantly, I think it's going to have it's a disincentive for rooftop solar. And when I think about whether the rate is just and reasonable, I'm thinking about it with respect to both the QFs and to other customers. And so I'm glad that we're having a workshop. That would be an opportunity to reevaluate, although at that point, I don't know that my concern will necessarily exist anymore, since we'll have different rates. If we were to move to well, that's the other thing, is that the workshop could explore what happens when some of the utilities are in a day-ahead market. So anyway, that's my reason for voting no. But I certainly appreciate Chairman O'Connell and Commissioner Ellison, with entertaining my thoughts and having this discussion.
Thank you. Okay, so we have one more item, which is communications with commissioners, and I'll let Commissioner Aguilera start us off with that.
Yeah, so I had mentioned that the DOE has these national interest electric transmission corridor proposals that they have put out, and that I asked through our chief of staff, the utility division, to consider whether to submit comments. The one thing that I failed to do is I thought that we would have another open meeting before the comments are due, but in fact they're due on June 24. And so the utility division recommended submitting some comments, and I think they're pretty factual and lean on the side of supporting the corridors that have been proposed by DOE that impact New Mexico. And those have been emailed around to you. I think at this point, given that the deadline is June 24, if you feel comfortable, we can submit them as a commission. If you don't feel comfortable because you don't have enough time, I can submit them as a single commissioner, or we can also, I think, ask the utility division to submit them. So, want to apologize that I did not give you a lot of time, and so I am definitely understand if you would prefer that I submit them on my own behalf. And if I didn't say it, the deadline is June 24, which is Monday.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at them at all. I'm not surprised that there's probably something worth saying, just because there is a big corridor that runs through New Mexico. And I'm comfortable with you submitting them under your signature.
Yeah, I would have to agree that that would probably be the best approach at this point. I also have not had an opportunity to review.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And so, you have the comments, and I think if anything changes, it might just be the format.
Yeah, I'm not seeing them in my email, so I doubt that Commissioner Ellison has them.
Okay, then maybe they were sent around to your advisors.
Yeah, no, I think I have a paper copy, but
Oh, I see.
I don't know how Commissioner Ellison has it.
I see. Okay, well then, we will make sure that you have those via email.
Okay,
Also welcome any edits or changes that you might have.
and then any other comments, communications?
That's it for me.
Yeah, I guess since we're having this, I'll just point out, next week, I'm gonna travel to a energy conference at Northwestern University. It's energy summit or symposium. So it's a group of professors that do legal research into the world that we're at. And I'm going because I'm on a panel to talk about the 30th anniversary of the Institute of Regulatory Law and Economics, which, as I've told you before, was where I learned that economists are more than lawyers without consequences. So I will go there and say I got some good learning from that institute. And then I'll report back anything I learn. And then we are keeping Commissioner Ellison from his vacation, so you're in charge of when this meeting ends, Commissioner Ellison.
Well, that's pretty easy then. And yeah, I did actually get something from Cynthia Enriquez before the meeting. I just have not had a chance to review.
Okay, thank you.
So
So seeing no objection, we're adjourned.
great. Thank you.